You're listening to the Toolstation Western League podcast with Ian Knockholds and Tom Hiscott.
Welcome to episode 36 of the Toolstation Western League podcast with me, Ian Knockholds, and I'm delighted to be joined in the heart of Bath at the Ram by Tom Hiscott, the author of the Western League Bulletin. Hello, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, doing well. It's nearly the end of the season, so lots going on. So yeah, it's good to meet up face to face.
It is very good. It's always good to meet up in person. We've got plenty of football to talk about, and indeed plenty of football to preview, haven't we? This is, it's a bit of an obvious thing to say in a way, isn't it? But it is the most exciting time of the season because everything seems to be sort of coming together.
Yeah, there's a couple of things decided on Saturday, but yeah, there's plenty, as you say, plenty going on, and a couple of sets of fixtures over the weekend, obviously with Easter coming up. So yeah, plenty to look forward to and plenty to preview.
But we kick off by having a look at the fixtures on Wednesday, the 10th of April, and we had two Les Phillips Cup semi-finals.
We did, and now obviously we know our finalists. Two Devon sides it is. So the first side through were Plymouth Parkway. A 4-1 win away at Cadbury Heath, pretty easy win for them. 3 goals in the space of 12 first half minutes, propelling them to victory. Adam Carter opening the scoring in the 29th minute, and he then doubled his tally and indeed his sides. And then it was Ryan Lane who made it 3-0 just for half time. Ben Allen did pull a goal back for Heath to get them back into the game, but Parkway pushed on, and it was the 5th goal of the game for them. And Mike Smith was the scorer of that one. So they're actually keeping their treble hopes alive. So I think they're still in a local cup competition as well. So Parkway still on for the treble, and in the Les Phillips Cup final they will take on Willand, who came from behind to grab a 1-1 draw with Bridgewater before winning on penalties. So Jack Taylor, obviously scorer of plenty of goals for Bridgewater this season, he put them ahead in the 22nd minute. Willand were then actually reduced to 10 men. Josh Searle shown 2 yellow cards, but they managed to fight back with 10 men. Ben Bickle levelling the scores. And then, as it has been the case this season, 90 minutes go straight to penalties, and it was Mike Searle who was the hero for Willand, saving a couple of spot kicks, and they prevailed 3-2 on penalties. So it's Willand versus Plymouth Parkway in the Les Phillips Cup final in a couple of weeks' time. Yeah,
of course, that cup final taking place on May the 6th at Sherborne, and I did notice that the announcement on social media of Sherborne hosting the final. Of course, in fairness, Sherborne themselves had announced it some time ago. In fact, we talked to their chairman, John Bowers, about it on this very podcast. But yes, it did raise a few questions, I think it would be fair to say, from some Western League watchers who wondered why they were going to Sherborne when perhaps other venues might have been more appropriate for a final between Plymouth Parkway and Willand Rovers. Well, the fact that we were able to talk to John about it so long ago would suggest that actually the host of the Les Phillips final is contacted some time before the semi-finalists, so that won't particularly appease fans, in fairness, particularly if you've got a long journey to make on May the 6th. But we have to spare a thought for our club volunteers. Every club's got them. Adding another fixture to the fixture list, even one as illustrious as the Les Phillips Cup final, does take some organisation. There's an awful lot of league dignitaries to accommodate. It's a real showpiece occasion for the Western League, and the Western League like to make the most of it. And it's something that, of course, John was very keen to talk about on the podcast because he considers it to be a great honour for Sherborne, and I know he's hoping that they'll get a big crowd and be able to make a few quid over the bar and all the rest of it. But matches like that don't put themselves on. They do take some organisation, and of course when you're dealing with volunteers, not paid staff, it does pay to give them as much time and notice as possible. So I hope that's a brief insight into the inner machinations of the Western League, but a point that I thought needed to be made, because I know it's not great for fans, particularly on a bank holiday weekend, to have to make a long trip, but some thought had been given, I can assure you, to where the final could be played, and at that time potentially involving both Cadbury Heath and of course Bridgewater Town as well, although as it subsequently works out, we will be featuring a final between Willand Rovers and Plymouth Parkway. Anyway, moving on to Saturday the 13th of April, and we kick off our Premier Division coverage with Buckland Athletic, and they were at home to Keynsham Town.
Yeah, indeed, and it was an away win in front of 75 fans down there at Homer's Heath. Clevedon running out 2-1 victors. George King opening the scoring for the away team before Buckland levelled things 2 minutes before half-time from the spot. Thanks to Ryan Bush, he's very much in form to end the season. He's having a great couple of weeks. It was Clevedon who ran out victors in the end. 4 minutes into the second half, and it was King again. And from reports, it was an absolute stonking goal. I think both social media accounts following the game said this was a pretty unstoppable effort from King, and that's how it stayed. So a 2-1 win for Clevedon.
Now moving on, Chipping Sodbury Town, they were at home to Shepton Mallet.
And it was 2 late goals for the home team, helping them prevail in this one. So Shepton Mallet going ahead, deflected free kick from Tyson Pollard in the first half, putting them ahead. But then, Sods, they fought back. And 2 goals in the final 10 minutes, helping them to victory. Josh Can and Dan Dempsey. So, well done to Chipping Sodbury.
Our next game is Hallen. They were taking on Bradford Town.
Yeah, a lot of close games on Saturday. This is the third 2-1 we've mentioned here, and it was another away victory. So it was Bradford eventually claiming a 2-1 win at Hallen. Will Hailston had put the visitors ahead, but then Caelan Simpson managed to level the scores midway through the second half, and it looked like that was probably going to be how it stayed. 1-1. Going into injury time, but then Bradford managed to claim a winner. It was Leon Greenland, followed by an excellent celebration from all accounts. So, Bradford running out 2-1 winners. So that's their 15th league win of the campaign. So well done to them.
Now our next Premier Division game involves Wellington. They were at home to Bridport.
Yeah, and it was their final home game of the league season. So a good way to finish for them. It ended 4-2. In Wellington's favour, having to come from behind in this one. An own goal from Tim Legg saw Bridport lead at the break, but Wellington were completely on it in the second half. Jack Bryant and Joe Chamberlain each scoring within 6 minutes of the restart to turn the game on its head. Chris McGrath was then dismissed for the visitors, and Wellington pushed on and taking full advantage. Chamberlain scoring a second, and then a goal from substitute Lewis Pocock for the second Saturday running, and brilliant second half performance from Wellington, and a great end to their games at home this season. It was a 4-2 win over Bridport.
And finally in the Premier Division, Westbury United, they were at home to Cribbs.
Yeah, and the points were shared in this one. Cribbs probably thought they'd done enough. They did fall behind really early on. Dan Kovacs putting Westbury ahead, but then a pair of headers either side the break from Jason Vincent. Obviously, we've mentioned him quite a bit recently. He's fantastic. Another, just like Bush for Buckland, he's having a fantastic end to the season. And it looked like they were going to get a 4th straight win away from home, but Westbury managed to push on late on, and it was Steve Holbert heading home in injury time to grab a share of the points. So it was finished Westbury 2, Cribbs 2.
Well, I'm delighted to welcome back to the Toolstation Western League podcast one half of the Westbury management team. It's Neil Kirkpatrick. Neil, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. A 2-2 draw against Cribbs at the weekend. Did you think that was a fair result?
Yeah, I think so. I think we started well. They had a good spell, and we finished well. We didn't do enough to win the game, we equalised very late on as well. So
it's been a season of 2 halves for you, hasn't it? You were flying before Christmas, but would you say that your form since then is probably what more you'd expect from your first season up in the Premier Division?
Possibly for the start of the season, but obviously as we had a good start, we're obviously all disappointed with the form of late, and I think mainly it's been down to availability of players. We've had real issues certainly through March. March was a complete nightmare, with stag weekends, weddings, and I know every manager's at this, so I won't go on about it. Yeah, that's really what's cost us, really. We work on a relatively thin squad, and we can't go out, and I think I've said before, we can't go out and just wave a checkbook at players and bring in top quality players. That's not what we're about. We're a close-knit group. So, yeah, it's been difficult. As I say, March was particularly challenging, and we had some big games in March as well. Parkway, Bitton, Parkway and Bitton particularly. It's hard going into those games missing players, but that's how it is. I can't complain. We've had a fantastic season. To finish 5th or 4th, because we're still challenging for 4th, and there's still that to play for. And again, if you'd said to us at the start of the season you'll finish 4th, I'd have probably laughed you out of town.
Well, I mean, looking on the positive side, because there's plenty of positives to take from your season, you've had wins against all the top 3 teams in the league. I mean, that must give you a lot of satisfaction. Definitely, and I think we sort of set ourselves about really trying to establish ourselves in the division, and upsetting a few of the big boys. The cup run, which we've done all that. We got to the semi-finals of the Senior Cup, County Cup, where we took Supermarine literally all the way. They equalised last minute of normal time. So, all right, we haven't won anything, but we've had a right roller coaster ride, and I think what our job as the management team with Joe and Luke and Barry is, to identify how we can then improve on that for next season. And I think, I've got an idea of what we're missing. And we've shown, we've shown we can compete with anybody. So it's then getting that consistency, which we had in the first half of the season, but not in the second half. If we look at your matches against Parkway, Bitton and Willand Rovers, I mean, have those games given you an insight into who you think will come out top in this season's contest? I'm still not 100% sure. I mean, my gut feeling says Parkway have got the the momentum at the minute. But they're all 3 good sides. They're all ambitious. They've all got their strengths and attributes. But I just feel Parkway seem to have real momentum at the minute. But it wouldn't surprise me. I'm not sure who plays who. I know Willand have got to play Bitton last game. I'm not sure what Parkway's running is like, to be fair, but it's a shame only one team go up, really. I've always felt that there should be 2 clubs promoted. Some good clubs not going to get promoted this year. On last week's podcast, we spoke to Clive Jones, the manager of Wellington, and he described Westbury as what he felt was the best pound-for-pound team in the league when you take into account the resources that you've got. Now, I mean, have you, particularly in the first half of the season, obviously when you were pulling up trees, did you find that that your sort of exploits were being recognised by the teams you were coming up? Bearing in mind, of course, you only gained promotion from the First Division last season. Definitely, and I've had a chat with quite a lot of the managers over the season. You don't always get to speak to some of them afterwards, and sometimes you can have heated disagreements during the course of games. I don't think a lot of people would believe, what our budget is and how well we've done on that budget, and it just shows, money isn't everything, and I've always believed that. We had that at Larkhall when we won the league. I think we've done fantastically well, and as I say, it's about getting a group of lads out on the pitch that are going to do the jobs, and it's difficult because sometimes you are up against some players that could quite comfortably play at a lot higher level, and if we have 2 or 3 injuries, we can't bring in the level of play. You look at Parkway. I mean, they had a game the other night, and I see Stuart Yetman came back from Tiverton and played for him. So which is great, and it's nothing wrong with that. But we can't do that sort of thing. We'll have a sit down with all the lads at the end of the season and probably go through expectations and what we want to do and what our hopes and aspirations are for next year. Well, before we get to next year, we have to talk about the Easter Bank Holiday weekend. And on Good Friday, you've got a game against Bradford Town. Now, that is a huge derby for the supporters, and you owe Bradford one, don't you? Yeah, we do. They were the first team to beat us on Boxing Day, which was pretty galling for us. And really disappointing because it's probably one of the few, if not the only game where we haven't turned up at all. I don't think we put in any type of, anything like we're capable of for the whole 90 minutes. Hopefully we can put that right, but they're a strong side. They if you talk sides with big budgets, certainly are one, and they've got aspirations. And as a club, they want to progress and go up the leagues. I know. So, and I know Wayne Thorne will have them, well drilled, well organised, and a very difficult side to beat.
So, we've got nothing whatsoever to lose. We'll go there and have a go. And as I say, our main focus really is trying to pick up enough points to try and overtake Bridgewater, who we've got on Monday. So we'll know a lot more by next Monday.
That's your last home game of the season as well, isn't it?
It is.
I suppose it will be. You'll really be looking for a big crowd for that one. I know you've been well supported this season, but there's a lot for the fans to celebrate, and of course Bridgewater, they will bring a fair few, I'm sure, as well. So I mean,
definitely.
It's a really good reason to get along and watch a game on Bank Holiday Monday.
Yeah, and it will be. I mean, there was a cracking game down at their place. It was a controversial goal, but. It was a cracking game down there, and I know Carl and Dave well, and they played the right way as well. So, really looking forward to catching up with them. And as I say, they've got tough. They've got obviously Cribs tonight. They've got ourselves. They've got Williams. So, we're hoping that obviously they do slip up, but they have been really consistent all season. So, you've got to take your hat off to them.
Now, one final question for you. We've been featuring a fair bit of footballing politics on the podcast in recent weeks. I think we've done a lot of talking about sin bins, and I mean you may have some thoughts on those. But more recently, there's been some information released about the restructuring that the Football Association are doing across across non-league football, and obviously we're really interested in steps 5 and 6. But one of the interesting announcements in literally in the last few days has been that. Playoffs will be introduced at step 6 in the 2021 season. Now, obviously, you're hoping that Westbury won't be at that, won't be involved in those. But of course, in quite recent history, you were in the First Division. You were battling it out in a promotion race, which of course you were ultimately successful in, but you may have lost out. So, I mean, if you look back on your time in the First Division, do you think playoffs would have been a positive development?
I think, it gives you it just probably eases the pressure a little bit in the fact that, it's a long, hard season, and I think a good thing to have, there is that if we don't do it, so you've got to make sure that you come through that, but then that's never easy because, like we've all seen in the Football League, there's always a team that comes up with a bit of momentum and, tends to win the playoff games, so I think, it's a good thing.
Neil, thank you very much for your time on the podcast this week, and also thank you very much for the support you've given us over the course of the season. It's been great having you on, and it's also been a great pleasure visiting your ground on a number of occasions as I've done this season. Enjoyed your hospitality. It's a great setup, and certainly you and your club and the volunteers that make it what it is are a great addition to the Western League. So hopefully supporters who haven't been to Westbury this season will get the chance to see your team and your club next term.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, we appreciate any nice feedback like that. And personally, from me, I'd just like to thank obviously Joe, Luke, Barry, and obviously Greg, the chairman, who's quite high profile on Twitter, and Lewis, who looks after our Twitter account, which we feel is done in great humour, and I think a lot of people have liked that this season. Fair but funny where he can be, and. There's some good people at the club who, we're doing our best to give them some success. So, we appreciate that.
Another job, another saving. Brought to you by Toolstation.
Is this all the receipts?
Yes, boss.
For everything we got from Toolstation?
Yeah, why?
I just thought we'd spend a lot more than this.
Oh, no. We got all the best brands too. Makita, Santex, Karcher, Nest.
Top job, top saving.
With over 15,000 trade-quality products at prices that are hard to beat, we're here to save you on every job. At toolstation.com and all 340 branches.
Now, moving on to the First Division, we start our roundup in the First Division with Cheddar. Now, they really needed a result against Oldham and Abertonians. Tom, did they get it?
Fortunately for Cheddar, they were forced to make do with a point, and they actually were, pretty fortunate to get it, in fact. Huffed and puffed, but couldn't break down Oldland for much of the game, and then the visitors took a stunning 1-goal lead. 20 minutes from time, Josh Williams putting them ahead, and Cheddar looking like they were facing defeat and probably the end of their title hopes. They did manage to grab a last gasp equaliser, Craig Morford popping up at the back post. But they were, unable to grab another, and were forced to draw with Oldland. A 1-1 it finished there.
Now, next up is the game that I was at, Devizes Town against Portishead Town.
Yeah, indeed. And not a great afternoon for the home fans, this one. 3-0 win for Portishead at Nursteed Road. Alex Harlington scoring twice, either side of a goal from Robbie Cox to give Portishead a pretty comfortable victory. And from what you've mentioned to me, it sounded like they could have won by more.
Yeah, it was a long afternoon in the Wiltshire sunshine for Devizes Town. I was trying to blow off the old commentary cobwebs by getting the old microphone out again and just running through a bit of commentary action for that, just getting prepared for the Les Phillips Cup final. And I was rather hoping for a little bit more from Devizes, it'd be fair to say. Portishead, in fairness, who mathematically I know were sort of in a position where they needed the points to make sure of their First Division survival. Well, I mean, they looked like a really good side. They played really well, and were arguably perhaps unlucky not to have scored more. They certainly looked like they were good for it. Some really good performances from Portishead. We've spoken to their manager earlier a couple of times actually on the podcast, and I know that one of the big problems that he's had has been player availability. And I'm assuming that he had a slightly stronger side out against Devizes, certainly than the last time the two played, because the last time the two played at Portishead, Devizes won 5-0. But that wasn't, sadly for Devizes, that wasn't the case on the weekend. My commentary is up on the internet if anybody wants to suffer it. You can find it if you follow me, or if you follow Devizes Town. That's probably the more sensible way of going about looking for it. What would probably make it slightly more interesting, if it were not so much for the Devizes fans, who probably heard enough of me for one season, but Portishead fans might be interested. The other group of fans who might be particularly interested in it are Melksham Town fans, because my summariser was former Melksham manager Kieran Baggs, ably assisted, I have to say, by Mark Cooper, who's had a very good career in the game, not just with Melksham, but of course with Weymouth and with Frome as well. So I had that made for a thoroughly entertaining way of spending an afternoon, even if the two of them wondered what on earth they were doing, giving up their time. Anyway, moving swiftly on, we will talk about Keynsham Town. They were at home to Bristol Telephones.
Yeah, and obviously we've mentioned Cheddar dropping points. Keynsham, no such problems for them. Once they'd broken the deadlock. So a goalless first half, so I'm sure there was some nervous souls around Keynsham. But yeah, Craig Wilson firing them ahead early in the second half, and from there it was pretty much all one-way traffic. Floodgates completely open. Tom Knighton, then Captain Harley Purnell, Mitchell Purnell, and then late on Jordan Anstey adding another to their tally. So yeah, a 5-0 win for Keynsham, obviously helping their goal difference if it does come down to that at the end of the season. And romping to a pretty easy victory in the end over Bristol Telephones.
Yes, a comprehensive victory indeed, Tom. 5-0, and of course that put them 4 points clear of Cheddar at the top of the First Division table. So I started my conversation with John Allen by asking him, well, life couldn't get much better than this, could it?
Yeah, it was another good win for us. We're obviously pulled away a little bit with 4 points now, but our feet are on the ground. You know what this league's like. Everyone's talking about it. It's talked about it all season. We've got 3 games now, and it's in our hands, and we have to make sure we get the job done now.
Yeah, well, you're right to say that the job isn't done, but Easter Bank Holiday will be a really significant period for you, won't it? Because if you beat Oldland and you beat Ashton and Backwell, then you will be champions.
Yeah, mathematically so. We're not really concentrating on a Backwell game. It's all about Oldland now on Friday. And as we have all season, we just literally, it's a cliche, but we have literally taken a game at a time. We don't really talk about the end. We don't really talk about winning it. We just talk about winning the next game. So we're all aware now. Obviously, we're at a stage of the season where you have to be aware of what the permutations are and what we can do. But we're very concentrated on Oldland, who obviously had a fantastic performance down at Cheddar on the weekend. So we know we're in for a really tough game.
We have to give credit where it's due. Cheddar have pushed you really hard this season. How big a result for you was it, that 2-0 win at their place?
Well, we'll know at the end of the season, really. I think, yeah. It's obviously it was billed as a title decider. That's a view I didn't take at the time. I thought with 15 points to play for after that game, there was still a lot of work to do. Obviously, it was a big game. Fantastic support down there. I think it was nearly just under 300 people there, and it had a bit of a cup final feel to it. An edgy game to start, as you can imagine, and yeah, we came through. It was a really good performance from us. You know, the two top teams in the league going head to head, and it showed in the game. Really, it was a really good game of football. I think everyone enjoyed it. It was there, and obviously we came out the victors and have moved on.
Now, in a way, that result wouldn't have mattered if you hadn't followed it up with a win. And it would be fair to say that Wincanton, they pushed you pretty close, didn't they?
Yeah, in the build-up to the Cheddar game, I felt with the size of the game against Cheddar, our lads were going to really perform there. You know, real good feeling for that. And in the back of my mind, it was followed by Wincanton away, which is always notoriously a really hard game. My mind was very much thinking about Wincanton, and it proved to be on the night. It had the feel of it after the Lord Mayor's show a little bit. It's dangerous after that kind of high of Cheddar to get yourself up again. For Wincanton, and on the night, in all fairness to Wincanton, they didn't deserve to lose the game, that's for sure. We didn't perform as well as we have done. I thought it was a below par performance from the lads, but what we did show was that grit, determination and sheer will not to be beaten. And you know, when you're going for a title, we showed all the attributes of what would be champions to win it in the last couple of minutes of the game.
Those of us who sort of watch Western League football regularly, particularly in the First Division, will notice the similarities with this season with previous seasons, and that is that both yourselves and Cheddar, are fighting it out yet again at the top of the table. On this occasion, it looks like the two of you mathematically will be 1 and 2 in whatever order that does turn out to be, and traditionally that's of course been enough to guarantee promotion. But that's not necessarily the case this season, is it?
No, I think we kind of knew something about it at the start of the season. A little bit of communication came through that this season is going to be slightly different, and obviously that's frustrating in itself because as long as I've ever known Western League football, the top 2 have gone up, and in some cases 3. And obviously we had our experiences of last season where we came so close. So to go into this season knowing that, if you win it guarantees it and even runners-up won't, was obviously, it's quite an hard pill to swallow for the team that does come second. So yeah, it's been frustrating. It's a bit of a bugbear of mine. I think the transparency from the FA down to all the clubs, whether you're in a relegation battle, not knowing your fate, or a promotion battle, not knowing your fate, it's been poor. I know the Western League don't really have too much say in what's going on at the FA level. But the transparency has been really poor, and I think at the start of the season, I think all clubs should know where they stand and what they've got to do. At the minute, we understand that if you finish in the top 9 nationally as a best points per game runner-up, you're going to get promoted. But that's still kind of not 100% sure because, as you know, and as a lot of people know, we've been following this guy on Twitter, a guy called Peter Miller, who's done this fantastic constant updated spreadsheet of what's going on nationally. But that should be done by the FA for me, not by some guy who's just took it upon himself to do it. So yeah, poor. I think you're potentially robbing a day of celebration for a team finishing runners up, not quite knowing their fate. And I think clubs are run by volunteers. That's all we're striving to do. I think it's just robbing a team of that day of celebration. And nothing worse. You finish runner up, you don't quite know your fate. That's kind of, it feels like a bit of a damp ending to the season, really.
Now, in the past, the idea of playoffs have been discussed in the Western League, in the First Division. And, of course, in the last couple of seasons, Keynsham may have benefited from that. Obviously, as you've just mentioned, you were very close to getting automatic promotion last season. Given how this season's panned out, do you still think that playoffs are a fair way to decide that second promotion place?
They're changing things. It seems like every season that something else is being changed at our level. I know the Southern League, I think, do playoffs, and obviously they're filtering that down into the Western League now. I think it's a good idea because I think it keeps a lot of team seasons alive. Us in Cheddar this year, we've kind of broke away, and I will take this opportunity to say I think that both of us deserve to go up as well. We're both the best teams in the league. The points will tell the league don't lie. We broke away from everyone else. But what it will do in the future will keep those teams in that top 6. And below that, their seasons will be alive. So I suppose from a spectacle, it will make things more exciting in the last 2 or 3 months of the season.
In these last couple of questions, John, we've been talking about the restructuring And I suppose we've been talking about football politics, haven't we? Really, it's how the game is managed off the pitch, and you're really only bothered about how it's managed on the pitch. But one thing I can tell you is that in an FA restructuring document that I have seen, and the process of restructuring steps 5 and 6 is now there's a 3-year project in the season 2021. The 15 Step 6 leagues will promote 2 clubs, 1 automatically and 1 will be via playoffs. So playoffs are coming to the First Division. I guess your job as manager of Keynsham, particularly this season and looking ahead, is to make sure that actually that's not something that's particularly relevant to you and your side.
Yeah, we're looking to try and get into the league above. We don't want to really be in that position, and hopefully we won't be. So, but again, as I said, I go back to it. I think they're changing football all the time, and I think it will keep a lot of teams' seasons alive. So I can see it as a positive, and hopefully it works out that way.
And my thanks to John for his time. Now then, moving on to Welton Rovers. The visitors were charred in a 5-goal thriller.
It looked like a brilliant game. Chard eventually claiming a 3-2 win. Nathan Warren putting them ahead after just 3 minutes. Before Aaron Cockrell scored a pretty unfortunate own goal, so giving Chard a 2-goal lead. Welton then got back into the game. Aaron Sevier, he's having a pretty good season. He managed to half the deficit, all still in the first half, so plenty going on at West Clues. But then Warren scoring his second of the game, restoring Chard's 2-goal lead on the half hour. So, a pretty frantic start to this one, 4 goals inside half an hour. Chard leading 3-1, but it was Welton who managed to get back into the game once more, cut the deficit. Sevier scoring again, 20 minutes from time, but it was too little, too late for them. And it was Chard managed to hang on to claim the 3-2 win.
Well, our final game in the First Division, Radstock Town, the Miners, they travelled to Wincanton Town, and it was definitely the away side that were at the races at the weekend.
Yeah, a third win on the bounce at just the exact time they needed. Obviously, down in the lower reaches of the division, and they've managed to move up to 16th thanks to a 3-2 win away at Wincanton. 1-goal lead at the break. For Wincanton it was Toby Cole, so Radstock have to come from behind in this one, but it was a brace from Sam Gregory and then also a goal from Jack Biddiscombe, turning the game in their favour, moving them 3-1 up. Dan Wise did get one back for Wincanton, set up a tense finish, but the Miners managed to hang on, and as I say, a third consecutive win, so doing real good things down there at the moment.
Excellent, Tom. Thank you very much indeed. Now we take our customary glance at the fixtures coming up, and we've got a bit of a bonanza coming up, because of course we've got the Easter Bank Holiday weekend, which means that not only do we get Western League football on Friday, we get it on Monday as well. So Bank Holiday Friday, Good Friday the 19th. Tom, what game has caught your eye in the Premier Division?
Chosen one of the top 3. Obviously that's where the pressure games are now that the relegation has been decided. So we've got Willand. They've got a 1 o'clock kickoff. They're away from home against Bridport. Bridport a couple of losses recently, but 2 big home wins also in there not too long ago. So and obviously hosting Willand, they'll be up for causing a few problems for their visitors, and I think they could potentially do that. So that's the game I've got my eye on. And as I say, Good Friday.
Well, if Buckland had been in slightly better form over the last few weeks, I would have said their trip to Plymouth Parkway could have been absolutely crucial in the old title mix-up. But I'm sure that as a local derby, that will still be a very keenly contested affair. The game that I've gone for, unsurprisingly, as a Wiltshire man, is Bradford Town against Westbury United. Both of these sides doing well, of course, towards the top of the division, but very much local bragging rights up for grabs here, and I'm pretty sure that I'm right in saying that Bradford were the first side to beat Westbury this season in the corresponding fixture in the Boxing Day roundup. So Westbury really need to be going to Bradford and reclaiming those bragging rights, but I've got a feeling that they're going to find it very difficult anyway. That would be my Premier Division pick. And what catches your eye in the First Division?
We've got Oldland against Keynsham. Obviously Oldland have just caused Cheddar a lot of problems getting a point away from home, and they're obviously in need of points in their fight against survival. So hosting Keynsham, obviously pressures on both, but Oldland at the bottom, equally in need of points as Keynsham are. So it's going to be a lot on the line there, and that's a 3 o'clock kickoff. So they will actually potentially know the Cheddar result before that game starts. So whether that pays on Keynsham players' minds, we'll never know. But Oldland not the walkover maybe many expect.
And I've gone for the Coalfield Classico. Unsurprisingly, Tom's made a noise there. It is my favourite, you're absolutely right. Radstock Town this time will be hosting Welton Rovers. I'm sure there'll be a big crowd. I hope there's some really good weather for it, because it's one of the great fixtures, certainly in my experience, in one of the great derbies in Western League football. So for anybody who hasn't experienced that, then get along to Southfields Recreation Ground. 1:30 the kick-off, I believe. And there are some really good timings, actually, on these kick-offs over the Good Friday fixtures. I mean, normally we're used to sort of staggered timings for the Groundhog weekend, but we can see on Good Friday alone, looking in the First Division, we've got Sherborne kicking off against Wincanton at 11:30. You've got the game I've just mentioned, obviously, Radstock against Welton Rovers at 1:30, and Oldland take on Keynsham at 3 o'clock. So there's a bit of value there if you want to try and get around one more ground in a day. I'm quite regularly doing that. In the First Division anyway on a Saturday. I've been known to take in the first half at Warminster and the second half at Westbury, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. You have to be a bit of a purist for that one. Anyway, we can't talk about Good Friday without talking about Easter Bank Holiday Monday, and again another full list of fixtures, very important as we know at this stage of the calendar. And Tom, what's caught your eye on Monday the 22nd of April?
So for the Premier Division, I've gone for another one of the top sides. Obviously, lots to play out on Friday. So the league table obviously will have changed by the time these Easter Monday fixtures come round. But I've gone for Cribbs against Bitton. Cribbs are a pretty good home side, and Bitton obviously one of those teams. Well, as we know, fighting for promotion, fighting for the title. Currently in third, but that obviously could be first, could be second come Monday. But a huge game. And plenty on the line as we know, and Cribbs will not be an easy fixture for them.
I've gone for Welton Rovers. They're at home to Wellington. I think this is, in many respects, I'm sure this would be considered to be a sort of a relatively routine game in the Premier Division, but it could have a massive bearing on who ultimately comes out on top. Willand, I'm sure, will be in a very strong position, but that's the funny thing about matches at this time of the season. You've got to negotiate your way past these opponents. You've got to get yourself through these fixtures taking maximum points. So these are two sides that aren't necessarily a million miles apart, so I'm sure that there'll be a very big crowd and lots of local interest for that game. What about in the First Division, Tom? What takes your eye there?
Huge game at the bottom. So I've mentioned Oldland a couple of times, and they travel to take on Chippenham Park. Again, mention that obviously these two teams could pick up points on Good Friday, but this on paper looks like could be the defining fixture if Bristol Telephones continue to struggle there. I mean, they themselves on Monday have got a game against Radstock, who could be safe by then, so might not be much to play for Radstock. So Telephones could pick up points. Obviously, they're the most desperate team at the moment, but this game is it looks like a perennial 6-pointer. We've got Chippenham Park really struggling at the moment against Oldland, who claimed that brilliant result on the weekend. So two teams fighting against relegation, and there's plenty on the line on Easter Monday.
And for me in the First Division, I've gone for Keynsham against Ashton and Backwell. You've heard in my interview with John Allen earlier in this episode of the podcast that if Keynsham win that game on Friday and then win this game on Ashton and Backwell, they will have secured the First Division title and with it promotion. So I think that for that reason you couldn't ask for a more important fixture, and indeed it would be fair to say Ashton and Backwell will give Keynsham a game. One thing we do know about Keynsham is that there'll be a massive crowd there for that. Of course, it's a really important match for their season in terms of the achievements. They've come so close so often in the last few seasons, but that game could be that could be a real crackerjack occasion, and it would be very interesting to see how those fixtures play out over the bank holiday weekend. Now, before we leave you in peace for another week, and before Tom and I return to the bar, we will have a look at our hot shots. I think next week we've got an awful lot to talk about in terms of the table, but for this week in particular, we'll have a look at how our leading goal scorers are getting on and who is hot and who is not.
Plenty of hot strikers at the moment. In the Premier Division, so league goals, only we've got Jack Taylor, Bridgewater, still leading the way. He's on 28. He's got a couple of players chomping at the bit to overtake him over the final few weeks of the season. Luke Mortimer, obviously a couple of goals on the weekend for him from Willand. He's on 26 league goals, and then we've got a couple of players on 23. We've got Callum Demkiv of Westbury and Ben Bammon, who got another hat-trick for Bitton on the weekend, so he's up to 23 league goals. So both of those two having brilliant seasons. And then in the First Division, it's still the Cheddar duo, far and away at the top of the pile. Adam Jones currently leads the way. He's on 28, and then we've got Adam Wright of Cheddar as well, obviously on 27. Callum Townsend, the most recent to move to 20 goals this season, of Ashton and Backwell. He's having a brilliant season. We've got a pair of players on 18. We've got Toby Cole of Wincanton, who scored on the weekend, and Sam Gregory of Radstock. He's also on 18 league goals. And then in all competitions, it's Ben Bammon of Bitton. He's one short of 40. He's on 39. Luke Mortimer, Willand's Luke Mortimer, he's on 37. Taylor of Bridgewater, a lot of the similar names that we've mentioned. Taylor of Bridgewater on 33. Demkiv of Westbury on 31. And then Jones and Wright of Cheddar on 30 and 29 respectively.
Excellent, Tom. Thank you very much indeed. We, of course, have been reviewing your excellent bulletin. Where can the listeners find that?
That is on the homepage, where you can download it as a PDF, and then it's also, homepage of the Toolstation Western League website, and then there's also a tab along the top that takes you to the most recent publication, and you can view that on in Word and PDF. You can download that, so that's all available on the website.
And have you penned your column for this week's non-league paper?
Looking back on the Premier Division, and obviously looking in particular at the title race. Obviously, all three teams good wins on the weekend. Looking back on the most recent games. So that's in the step 5 and 6 section in the non-league paper.
That's excellent, Tom. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to have plenty of football to discuss next week, but from Tom and myself, before we return to the bar here at the Ram, you have been listening to the Toolstation Western League podcast.